I'm going to list the 5 biggest mistakes of John Cena's WWE career. These can be booking decisions made for him or by him. These can be instances in which fans still talk about to this day, and I cannot wait to discuss it because John Cena's 2025 is in full effect. His retirement tour is underway as John Cena prepares to ride off into the sunset for the very last time come December of 2025, kicking off his first appearance on the Raw on Netflix. And oh, what a journey it's about to be. Let's get into the 5 biggest mistakes of John Cena's WWE career. Number 5, it is his feud with Rusev. Y'all remember this? When Rusev was first brought onto WWE's main roster, he had been booked as a killer in NXT and doing so on the main roster. Lana at his side, he had a lot of potential, a lot of upside, and he was given a chance to dominate everybody in sight on the main roster. And it ultimately led to a major WrestleMania showdown with John Cena. You know what I'm talking about. WrestleMania 31 in 2015. Everybody remembers that show as being the one that Hulk Hogan and the NWO and Sting and Triple H mixed it up. Or how about Seth Rollins' cash-in at the end of the night? Or Randy Orton's infamous RKO. But in my eyes, people don't talk about enough the John Cena burial of Rusev. And it's not necessarily because of John Cena's fault. Now look, this ultimately should have been a big-time win for Rusev to establish himself as a top-tier main event heel moving forward. However, WWE opted to protect the Golden Goose. Instead of focusing on stars of the future at this time, the WWE, and let's be real, Vince McMahon, they opted to stick with John Cena, having him pick up the win and ending Rusev's undefeated streak. Look, it was the wrong call on the night of, and in retrospect, it is the wrong call still. This was a clear example of WWE overprotecting its top star. Up until Roman Reigns came along, and even at this time they were trying to establish him as that, they didn't have anyone else. And you knew that Rusev had some potential, especially with that gimmick, that act. But WWE opted to go with John Cena. I still think in retrospect it was a bad idea. At number 4, it was his feud with John Laurinaitis. Anytime there's a GM, an authority figure, that gets involved in a wrestling angle, there's a chance that things could go very, very bad, very, very south. And this feud was dull and it was boring. And that was just on display. Now look, when John Cena feuded with John Laurinaitis, a former wrestler, it was a dull angle that left fans just flabbergasted. They did not enjoy it whatsoever. And that included John Cena putting over John Laurinaitis at one point. Then, to try to save the angle, they brought in the Big Show, and he turned heel for another 525th time. He got involved, but that didn't help either. And the storyline just dragged and dragged with seemingly nobody enjoying it. And it was just a case of WWE going with the wrong idea. I understand that John Laurinaitis was a Raw GM at the time. I understand that he was the power figure, the authority figure, arguably the biggest heel at the time. But this was just bad. Laurinaitis hadn't wrestled in years. He was older at that point. It was just not ever going to be a good idea. John Laurinaitis was one of those guys where he didn't have good heel heat. He had please get off my television heat. And it just wasn't very good. At number 3, it was defeating Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 30. There are certain times in John Cena's career that he needed to put people over, and WrestleMania 30, going up against Bray Wyatt in his prime, was the very best, perfect example of that. In NXT, Bray Wyatt reinvented himself after the Husky Harris debacle on the main roster years ago. Forming this Bray Wyatt character, forming the Wyatt family, it was an exciting new act in NXT. It came to the main roster, and it was over like Rover. Bray Wyatt was an exciting new star in the company, with fans expecting a lot out of him. And he was ready to get pushed to the moon. He was being pushed to the moon and was ready for the next level, to take on that main event level type spot. However, when it came time after his Shield feud, which was very fun, WWE opted to feed Bray Wyatt to John Cena. That build-up to WrestleMania 30 in 2014 is one of the best build-ups you will ever see. I highly, 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 highly recommend going on YouTube and checking out the video package for this feud. It was fantastic. But his first major feud, his first major storyline at that level, saw him lose as WWE opted to protect John Cena yet again. Not only was it the incorrect decision by WWE as they looked to need to focus on the next crop of talent to build future stars, they did not need John Cena to get a big win here. In fact, they needed Bray Wyatt to get the win because this started the downfall of Bray Wyatt in many ways. By having him beat a John Cena, it would establish himself as a main event type guy because there was a lot of very few and far between guys that would beat John Cena and especially beat John Cena at a WrestleMania. In fact, I think it is something in which people don't discuss enough because after then, when Bray Wyatt would do his programs, he would do these creepy promos. He would talk about this, he would talk about that, and then he would lose. Rinse and cycle and repeat. Over and over and over. It seemingly he never got a win in his feuds. And I feel like the trend of that started here with John Cena. It is one of the most irresponsible booking decisions I've ever seen in pro wrestling. But the late great Bray Wyatt, he could not overcome John Cena, and that was a bad mistake. At number 2, now this is another decision, but I think it's worth mentioning. Never turning heel. Look, one of the general mistakes that WWE made with John Cena in his booking over the years was the fact that he was not able to tap into his heel turn. Look, John Cena, he did a lot of good as a babyface. He carried the company for literally over a decade. He did a lot of good stuff, including Make-A-Wish Foundation contributions, selling a ton of merch, and doing a lot of charity work for the company. However, we should have got a heel turn. Now, I understand that we did get a heel turn out of John Cena before he became, a main event guy, right? He was a heel in 2002, 2003, a little bit into 2004, and a really, really good one. But he was never a heel as a main event type guy, a top tier guy. And that's a shame. Now, we did get close for his Rock program. It was a situation in which he had new music made. He had rapped it or sang it or produced it, whatever you want to refer to it as. He also got new gear. He was going to be everything. The way he describes it is anything and everything that you liked about John Cena, he was going to do different. From the look to the way he carries himself, every single thing. And so that was a missed opportunity. I think in a lot of ways it would have helped his career. I think it would have taken him to the next level because he was going to be a great heel because he had already been a great heel, right? But Vince McMahon was afraid to do it because it was a golden goose, right? That's the same reason why they never turned Hulk Hogan heel in WWE in terms of, his main run, his prime run. He was afraid. He didn't want to do it. When you have that level of money with merchandise and everything like that, it's a hard decision, right? Money talks, and although it would, I think, help the product in a lot of ways, well, the bottom line came first in the eyes of Vince McMahon. And I can't necessarily say that I blame him for that, right? Because we all go to work for money. But at the end of the day, I think that was a missed opportunity, and I think that's one that Vince may regret. At number 1, I could not leave it off the list. I had to bring it up. It's killing the Nexus. Now, John Cena didn't kill the Nexus, and I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute. But let's set the scene. So it was SummerSlam 2010. It was Team WWE versus Team Nexus. Now, as soon as Nexus debuted, that infamous segment on Monday Night Raw, they had been feuding with John Cena. And this was the big blow-off to the feud, right? And everyone and their dog figured, okay, the Nexus has been booked stronger than anyone had been in years. They certainly have to go over here, okay? Some of the guys on that team, WWE, included Bret Hart, Bryan Danielson, Edge, Chris Jericho, and John Cena. Now, Edge appeared on Chris Jericho's podcast years ago, and they discussed this, and this is what Jericho had to say. It was WWE team versus Team Nexus, and the finish boiled down to Edge and me. We were in there. It was Cena against a couple of them. John wanted to do things a certain way, and we told him, you're wrong. Remember that. He did it anyways, and it sucked. And then afterwards, he came over to us and said, I should have listened to you guys, but I wasn't seeing it that way. And sometimes you don't see it that way. He wanted to do a DDT on the floor by Barrett, and they kick out and then beat both of them. And you and I were like, that's the dumbest thing. That's just throwing it away for no real reason. Wade Barrett has stated in years past that he thought that the Nexus was going to win. In fact, he was told that the Nexus was going to win, and then they showed up to the arena and the decision had been changed. Now, in Jericho's book, he came out and confirmed that it was a Vince McMahon decision for Cena to win, and it wasn't necessarily a John Cena thing. So the fact that he, quote unquote, killed the Nexus, I don't think is fair, but he certainly didn't help anything. He certainly buried them because he could have said, no, boss, that's a bad idea, right? He's a vet. He's a top guy. And this is what Jericho had to write in his Best in the World book. The match was going to come down to Justin Gabriel and Barrett versus John Cena. John, he insisted that Barrett pull back the mats and give him a DDT on the concrete floor for a false finish. After kicking out, he was going to pin Gabriel and then make Barrett tap out with his STF submission. Edge and I disagreed with John's logic and thought the DDT on the cement floor was unnecessary, especially since he was going to be winning by submission a short time later, which we disagreed with. But Vince wanted Cena to go over. And then he confirmed that John Cena came over in the locker room and said, you know what, we made the wrong decision. So I think if you look at it like this, was it a situation in which the Nexus needed to win? Yes, because they were white hot. They were the hottest thing in the company in 2010. There wasn't a lot of hot things going on in WWE in 2010. They should have went over here. They really should have.